Hi, this is John Linneball, and this is How to Study for the SAT and ACT Last Minute Tips, now improved. I'm John Linneball with John Linneball Tutoring, and you can reach me at johnlinneball.com. You can email me at john@johnlinneball.com. Here's my office phone number, 415-986-7355, and here's my cell phone number, 415-623-4251. If you like this video, please make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and click the notification bell. What we're covering here: what should I do the day before the test? What do I need to bring with me? What should I know for the SAT math sections? What should I know for the SAT English section? What should I know for the SAT reading section? And what should I know for the SAT essay section? And remember again, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and click the little bell in the top right corner for notifications. And yes, all the information here will be perfectly good for the ACT. First of all, when you're about to take the SAT, stop studying at or about your normal bedtime. You're just not going to learn anything new when you're cram studying. Being tired the next day because you were trying to cram study will hurt your score because you'll be tired and inattentive, besides the fact that you didn't really learn anything from the cram studying. The science behind this whole cram studying is basically, in a very dumbed down, glossed over way, your brain only produces certain amounts of proteins and things that are necessary towards actually recording memories. So once you've surpassed that for a certain time, you can't learn anymore. Anyway, at this point, after you're reviewing the math formulas and maybe a little grammar, etc., you're ready for bed, or at least you're ready to stop studying. But John, I'm nervous. What should I do? Well, turn your nervousness into productivity. Make sure you're prepared by laying everything out. Make sure you've got your admission ticket, your ID, your calculator with extra batteries, maybe 3 or 4 sharpened number 2 or HB pencils. HB and number 2 mean the same thing, soft lead pencils. And make sure you have your printed out admission ticket, ID. If you don't have a photo ID and you're not taking it at the high school that you attend, probably should bring your birth certificate or something that says who you are. You might even need a letter from your guidance counselor or something like that, just so you have proof that you are who you are. Make sure you have everything: your watch, your wallet, your ID, your calculator, your extra batteries, your pencils, and your erasers all in one bag. You don't need any pens, don't bring your cell phone, etc., etc. We'll talk about that in just a second. So make sure you have an approved calculator. You can check the SAT or ACT website for a list of approved calculators, but basically anything you'd use in a math or science class should be fine. Nothing that plugs into the wall, makes a paper receipt, can send or receive messages. If it connects to the internet, no. You can't use your cell phone. Can't use a laptop, can't use an adding machine. I don't know why you'd want to, but don't use an adding machine with a paper roll on it. And if it plugs into the wall, they're not going to let you plug into the wall just because it's going to be a pain for them to seat you. And basically, you can program in formulas if you have a TI-83, TI-84, or something along those lines, a fancy graphing calculator. It's not cheating, really. It's not. You're allowed to do that. So here's my tutoring website, but anyway, here's the SAT calculator policy straight from the horse's mouth. This is at collegereadiness.collegeboard.org/SAT/taking-the-test calculator-policy. You can find that. You can also just Google taking the calculator, which is what I did, so I just used approved, not taking the calculator, but approved calculators SAT. Tech-powered math comes up ahead that. Funny how that is. Anyway, doesn't matter. Just go look on the SAT site itself. You can say, oh, I have a Casio. Oh, I have an HP. Oh, I have Texas Instruments. Okay, TI-83. Oh, good, I have a TI-83. I can use it. So just make sure that you do that sometime this week if you're planning on taking the SAT this coming Saturday. So anyway, You want to make sure you have extra batteries and all that stuff, as I've just said. Make sure you know your accommodation. So if you have a disability, you have an IEP program, and you've requested and received a reasonable accommodation from the College Board or from American College Testing for the ACT, College Board is SAT, make sure you know what that entitles you to, what, if you're getting extra time or if you have to get a separate kind of quiet room, whatever. Figure that out, figure out how much time you have for each section, and make sure you get it by tracking the time on your watch. Yes, actually bring a wristwatch or a little clock timer or something that's obviously just kind of a digital or analog watch that doesn't do anything else. And time it. And complain. If you don't get your accommodation, if you get an exam proctor who is not very well informed, believe me, a couple of my students have complained to me about proctors who just didn't know what they were doing. They weren't handling the people who had accommodations, but they said things like, well, they started talking to students about the movies while the students were supposed to be taking the test, didn't get the time right, etc. So please, if you do run into a problem with your accommodation or any other irregularity, anything you think is unfair or stupid, not just, gee, I really think it's stupid the College Board does this, but it's stupid that, no, I know they're not supposed to do this on the test. You can report that and should report it to the College Board. The way to do that is, I just Googled complaints regarding SAT irregularities. And here's from PrepScholar.com. If you took the SAT and would like to contact the College Board to file a complaint about your test center, call this number, area code 609, I believe that's New Jersey, 771-7710, or email this address, testcenter@info.collegeboard.org, both of which are specifically for test center complaints. And then the College Board has its own contact us, so here's register, test day problems, cancel scores, test center complaints. All right. Hey, there's a test center, and here's a fax number. Wow, you can even fax 609-771-7710. So, maybe that phone number is not one you should call. Yeah, okay. They're saying it's a fax number, so don't call this number. Fax it. Or email. It's probably better anyway to fax or email, just so you actually have the thing in writing. That way there's no misunderstanding. Nobody can misrepresent what you told them. You can say, it's in writing. And email, of course, is free. So it's pretty easy to do. If you want to report any irregularity to the College Board. What else do I need? Well, as I mentioned before, several sharpened number 2 or HB pencils. A small plastic pencil sharpener, it's a good idea. Just bring a little pencil sharpener. It doesn't have to be plastic, but just be something that's obviously just a pencil sharpener, is not possibly dangerous, is nothing you could use to cheat. An eraser, fine. If you really need to erase a whole bunch of stuff, bring a little pink pearl eraser, one of those pink erasers. A snack, you probably want to bring something that's easy to carry and not going to make a mess. So think protein bar, not lasagna, and a bottle of water. Now's not the time to bring a bunch of soda or something like that. Just bring water, so that way it's less likely to be destructive if you spill it on your test booklet or something like that. Extra batteries for your calculator should be self-explanatory. The perversity of inanimate objects or Murphy's Law, I guarantee you the time that your batteries will run out on your calculator is exactly when you need it the most. A printed out map of directions to your test site if it's not someplace you know well. Obviously if it's your high school, you know how to get to your high school. But if it's in another town because you couldn't get a date at your high school or something like that, then please make sure you know how to get there. Bus fare or your transit card if you need to get from your home to the test site on transit. Again, if it breaks down, your car breaks down, etc., or just make sure you have Uber or Lyft installed on your phone and plenty of credits and a valid credit card, etc. So just make sure. I guarantee you that'll be the day that your parents decide to go out of I'll try that again. Your parents decide to go out of town on vacation, and you don't have your bus fare or a transit card, or there's a big mass transportation strike that day. So make sure that you have money or credit so you can ride on Uber or Lyft. Or make sure you have a really good friend who has a car who's willing to drive you there. Transit fare, Uber, but I own a car. Well, as I just said, cars break down at the worst times. It's called the perversity of inanimate object, also known as Finagle's law. So the perversity of inanimate objects, just obviously inanimate objects can't be perverse because they don't have any consciousness, but it certainly seems like it, which led to this witty statement: the goal of all inanimate objects is to resist man and ultimately defeat him, by Russell Baker. So just make sure you have a backup plan: Uber, Lyft, bus, train, walking, etc. if the car won't work. Just because, for this reason, even if you have a good cause, probably you will not be excused if you are late. I've had students complain to me that they had to wait because they did actually wait for somebody to get there. So it might not be completely futile if you have the phone number of the test center, which would be a good thing to get in advance, don't you think? To call if you are going to be late. Maybe they will actually do something. They did in the case of one of my students who complained pretty bitterly about that because he didn't feel he should have to wait because somebody else was late. Anyway, the reason for that you shouldn't count on that, is standardized tests are designed to be, well, standard. That means everybody has to be treated identically. That doesn't necessarily mean fairly, but everybody has to be treated identically. So the reason that I say identically does not mean fairly is I've been told of a bar exam candidate for some state's bar exam failing because he or she literally saved the life of another candidate who'd had a heart attack, gave that person CPR until, EMTs could get there, etc., and was not granted any additional time to take the exam. There is no reason to believe that the SAT or the ACT is going to be any different from the bar exam or any other standardized tests. The reason is because then if they do that, then everybody's going to complain, wait a minute, that person wasn't tested under the same conditions as me. How is that fair? So that means the test is supposed to start and end on time. And as I said, I've heard of delays. Just don't count on getting such a break if you're late. Again, it's kind of a corollary of Murphy's Law that you always have the worst luck. Okay, if you're the person who's late, it's going to start on time. You're going to get somebody who's a real stickler who says, no, you were supposed to be here at least 15 minutes before the test started. The fact that your car broke down or that the bus driver didn't know where he was going or blah, 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 that's not my problem. If you are the person who's there early, of course it's going to start late because, again, you have the worst luck. So there's nothing you can do about it. If you are late, just be considerate. Screaming at them isn't going to change anything. If you have to wait because of somebody else, again, complaining and screaming will do absolutely nothing. So just don't bother. So what I do suggest is get there early and relax. Get some breakfast at a restaurant near the test site. Hey, maybe have a nice relaxing early morning walk over there. Clear your head. Meditate, exercise, look at something fun. Chat with the other kids who are there, the other early birds. Don't try to study. You shouldn't even have books or study guides with you. Even using your phone, you won't learn anything at the last minute. And finally, you're just going to stress yourself out. I strongly suggest that you have nothing with you, obviously, other than what I've told you to bring with you. Your wallet, your ID, your test center admission ticket, your, pencils, your eraser, your calculator, your little pencil sharpener. Because you can't be accused of cheating with a phone that's off. But even more than that, you can't be accused of cheating with a phone you don't have. Also, anything you bring anything you bring with you to the test center that you end up having to put aside, let's say your phone, let's say, a review book you brought with you, let's say a little novel you decided you wanted to read before the test. Any of those things could end up being stolen, could end up being thrown out, could end up with an exam proctor who brought lasagna and a nice Coca-Cola, spilled on your stuff, etc. Could be broken, could be damaged, could be stolen, and don't count on even grown-ups who work as exam proctors to take responsibility for something expensive that they lost or broke. They could just look at you and say, I don't remember getting anything from you. If you have a problem, maybe you could file a claim with the school, or the college board or something, but da-da-da. So, if you like your iPhone X, keep it at home. Okay. General SAT tips. Well, generally in any section, if two answers are the same, they can't both be right, so they have to both be wrong, because it's a multiple choice question, and SAT questions are already criticized for unfairness enough. There's no way they're going to have something that's ambiguous where there are two answers that are equally right. I know there are some, especially on the reading, that look very similar, and both are arguably right, but at least they'll have a rationale why one is right and one is not right. So if they're exactly the same, they can't both be right, so they have to both be wrong. Read the instructions I'll try that again. Read the instructions before the test day. You can use the free sample SATs from the College Board or your SAT prep book. The instructions will be the same. You won't waste time reading the instructions on test day if you've already read them. On the SAT and the ACT, answer every question. There is no guessing penalty. There used to be one on the SAT. There still is a guessing penalty on the SAT subject test, but that's not the main SAT that I'm talking about. If you take the SAT subject test for physics or Spanish or something like that, yes, there is a guessing penalty on that, but again, not on the main SAT. Guess away. You are an idiot if you don't answer every question, even if it means when you realize there's 1 minute left, I haven't answered 10 questions, fine, just go C, 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 pick whatever your favorite letter is. I don't recommend A because A is the prime sucker punch location, but fine, pick B, C, or D, go with it, you have my blessing. Write all you want in the test booklet and on the planning page. No one will read it. What I mean by that is exactly that. The only person who's going to see what you wrote in that booklet for the SAT is whoever shreds those things. If it's still the same as when I took it and everything I've seen, they don't give you your specific personal booklet back. They'll just give you a copy if you order the question and answer service. A new copy of the test questions. Some tests, I think the PSAT, they actually do give you your personal test booklet back, but I don't care. Anyway, you can literally write on the test booklet or in the test booklet, screw you SAT people, you're a bunch of losers. I know you went into college testing because no girls liked you in high school or no boys liked you in high school or no whatever liked you in high school, and that's why you pick on high school kids. No one is ever going to see that who matters, and believe me, I'm sure the guy who does the shredding has seen that all before. So say, yep, whatever. Okay, you can use a system of marks to mark questions to revisit. You might use an X for ones you don't know at all. You might use a question mark for ones that you can figure out because you've eliminated some questions, but you still have some questions about it. And also, when you go to something like the command of evidence questions in the reading section, you can have maybe a smiley face or something like that just to put next to the questions that are right before the command of evidence questions, so oh, this is the question about which I will be asked where I got the answer. They're going to say, the best evidence for the answer you chose for the immediately preceding question is, if you have that smiley face or star or something like that, you'll know, oh, okay, I should mark where I find the answer because then it'll make it a lot easier for me to find the command of evidence question. And you've had a sneak preview of What to know for the math section, ACT or SAT. So first, you want to know the instructions. Don't read them during the test. That wastes time. The only difference between the instructions for the two SAT math sections is one lets you use a calculator, the other doesn't. On the ACT, it's just 60 questions, 60 minutes. On the SAT, they give you this box here with all these formulas. Please memorize these formulas. I won't get terribly upset if you don't know something, one or two, like the formula for the volume of a cone or a rectangular bottom pyramid. But you should know the area of a circle, area of a rectangle. You should know 30, 60, 90 triangles, 45, 45, 90 triangles, and their side ratios. And notice they tell you all variables and expressions used represent real numbers unless otherwise indicated. So if they tell you that it involves I, the imaginary unit, then you know that's not a real number. Figures provided in this test are drawn to scale unless otherwise indicated. So that's not necessarily true on the ACT, but definitely on the SAT. Unless they tell you note not drawn to scale, note figure not drawn to scale, then it is drawn to scale. You could even use the little edge of your test, sheet, your answer sheet as a little ruler, but that's not the most accurate method. It's only good if you're really desperate. Also, the exam proctors might look at you funny, and you're going to have marks on the edge of your sheet that you're going to have to make sure you erase really carefully. But you can do that. Okay, all figures lie in a plane unless otherwise indicated. Well, yeah, they're mostly going to be two-dimensional figures, or even a three-dimensional one's fine. It's in 3 dimensions. But kind of by definition, any two-dimensional figure should lie in a plane. Unless otherwise indicated, the domain of a given function f is the set of all real numbers x for which f of x is a real number. So that's important. That means you can't just look at integers as a domain. You have to look at numbers, which is all real numbers. All right, so know the formulas you'll be given. As I've said, really, the fewer you have to look up during the test, the more time you will have to finish the test. That having been said, don't beat yourself up. If you have to use the box, use it. You've heard of Better Call Saul? Well, this is Saul. So if you get in trouble, call Saul. Don't pick answer choice A in a hurry. What I mean is if the answer came to you really easily, you may have picked a really obvious distractor answer that seems right if you don't spend more than a second or two on the problem. So, for example, this is a real thing, happened to me in real life. The very first PSAT math problem I did was 2 cubed equals question mark. The answer choice A was 6. Guess what I picked? Because I spent about 2 seconds, if even that, probably less than 1 second on it. Said, 2 times 3, it's 6, duh. No. I'm sure choice B was the correct choice, 8. Anyway, so just spend a little extra time. Don't worry, there's a happy ending. I still did well enough to qualify for a National Merit Scholarship, so yay. But I still feel pretty stupid about that 33 years later, so don't make mistakes like that, because you don't want to be thinking about this when you're almost 50 years old. Okay, anyway, intermediate values, numbers you have to or probably will compute to get the answer, are also good distractor answers. For example, if Fred drives 100 miles at 80 miles per hour, how many minutes will it take him? So it's easy enough to figure out it'll take him 100 miles divided by 80 miles per hour, which works out to 1.25 hours. If you choose that as an answer, though, 1.25, you're wrong. Why? Because the question asked for minutes, which would be 1.25 hours times 60 minutes per hour, which is going to be 75 minutes. So watch out for distractors at answer choice A, because that's a really good place to put things where somebody who isn't really thinking very closely will find their answer and say, I just figured that answer out. That must be the right answer. Don't be that kid. Not drawn to scale means redraw this diagram. So if an SAT diagram is captioned with note, figure not drawn to scale, it was intentionally drawn to fool you. The nice thing is that usually means if you redraw it even close to scale, it should be easy to figure out to see how they were trying to fool you and solve the problem. In other words, they know the problem is pretty easy if it's actually drawn to scale, which is why they're messing with you. So, for example, not drawn to scale diagrams may make lines look parallel, but unless they tell you the lines are parallel, you can't assume, so the rules governing transversals won't apply. For example, if M and N are actually parallel, then you can take a line across it, make a transversal, and I can say, okay, angle 1 is equal to angle 4 is equal to angle 5 is equal to angle 8. 6, 7, 2, and 3 are also equal to each other. That's wonderful, but if it says note not drawn to scale and it does not tell you that M is parallel to N, you don't know any of that. So for all you know, the real diagram or the real arrangement of these lines, and they might not even tell you that they're lines, so then you don't know anything. It could look like this. Here's our diagram now, drawn the real way. Notice it's not even a straight line up here, and they're definitely not parallel, and da-da-da. So that's why you can't trust anything that's not drawn to scale, and you must rely on writing, such as K and L are parallel lines, or ABCD is a square, O is the center of a circle with P on its edge, once they tell you that it's not drawn to scale. More math tips. You should know the quadratic formula. You'll need it to solve quadratic equations that you can't factor. So here's one hint. If you see radicals in the solution choices, you know you won't be able to factor and must use the quadratic formula. Or alternately, you could use completing the square, but most people don't want to do that. And a lot of kids don't know it. One of my students took a test in his math class where you're supposed to do everything by completing the square, and he told me that the average score on that quiz was a 30 out of 100. So it's good to know completing the square. It'll help with circle problems, but generally for just quadratic formula problems or quadratic equations, know the quadratic formula. It's the liquid plumber that will dissolve any clot. It doesn't matter if it's one that's easy to factor, you can still use a quadratic formula. If it's one that's not easy to factor, then the quadratic formula is your formula. You want to know how to translate English to math and vice versa. Know that x is less than equals minus x, or sorry, x less than. So, you're subtracting x from y, then it's going to be y minus x. X greater than, you add x. Sum of x and y is x plus y. The difference of x and y is equal to x minus y. X percent is x over 100. Percent literally means per 100. No percent increase and decrease. So 10% increase in x is going to be x plus x times 10 over 100. 10% decrease would be x minus x times 10 over 100. And if you change the percentage, just change the 10 to that number. If this were 5, then you'd make this 5, make that 5. If this were 7, make it 7, make it 7. The square of x is just equal to x squared. 3 times or thrice, it means multiply by 3. 4 times or fourfold is times 4. A lot of my students didn't understand what the word fourfold meant, so that's why I'm specifically bringing that up. So, the SAT likes transversals. Know their properties. You can click on my video link to learn about transversals. Is this a transversal? No, that's a transformer toy. That's not a transversal. This is a transversal. It's a transversal more than meets the eye. All right. Extend or draw lines to solve geometry problems. Extending a line can make geometry problems much easier. So here we have a problem where it reads, in the diagram, the center angle is 87 degrees and 2 other angles measure x and y as detailed above. What is y minus x? So you're probably looking at this going, I don't know, John, why are you bothering with this? Why are you bothering me with this? And note, figure not drawn to scale. Oh, great. You're a real peach, John. Thanks a lot for this problem. Don't curse me out too much just yet. This is actually pretty easy to solve. All we have to do is extend one of these lines. So boom, if we extend this line and we see, okay, this is a transversal. Oh, you know what? I didn't say that these are parallel, so fine. Assume that I did write down that these things are parallel. So then what we can do is look at this and go, yeah, we know these lines are parallel. And we know that, hey, if these are parallel, then y, this also has to be equal to y. And then we know that x plus 87 is a vertical angle that's across from this angle that we know is y. So wait a minute, that means y has to be equal to x plus 87. So y minus x is equal to 87. And again, that's assuming that these two lines are parallel, but I've told you to assume that, so you can assume that. Excellent. Another example, in the figure below, a circle is inscribed in a square. What is the ratio of the diameter of the circle to the diagonal of the square? Is it 1/2, square root of 2 over pi, square root of 2 over 2, or 2? Well, so how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, they didn't give us any numbers, but that's good. If they didn't give us any numbers, we can use any number we want as long as we preserve the ratio. Well, why don't we say the radius from the center here to the edge is 1? So if we do that, then we know that the diameter has to be 2, and since it's inscribed in a square, the side length of the square is also 2. So now that we know that the side length is 2 of the square, then we can easily tell that the diagonal of the square is 2 root 2. How we do that is we know that whenever we split a square diagonally, we end up with a 45, because that's half a 90. This is 45, half a 90. 90, so it's 45, 45, 90, and you should know, and if you don't know, you can find it in the little box they give you on the SAT, that the side length ratio of a 45, 45, 90 triangle is 1, 1, root 2. Since we know that this is 2, because we set the radius equal to 1 and the diameter is equal to 2, so the side length is 2, then this is going to be 2, 2, and then this diagonal is 2 square root of 2. So once we know that, then we know that the ratio of the diameter, which we know is 2, to the diagonal is 2 divided by 2 square root of 2, as I've noted here, which then simplifies to 1 over square root of 2, but which we're going to multiply by radical 2. That is square root of 2 divided by square root of 2 to get square root of 2 over 2. If you don't know why we did that, that's called rationalizing the denominator, because a lot of math teachers don't like it if you have a radical, square root of some number in the denominator. And the SAT sometimes will have it, but usually doesn't. They also would like you to rationalize the denominator, especially because it makes the problem a little harder. So then we know it's answer choice C, which is radical 2 over 2, which we see here. So, all right. And more math tips. You want to know the vertex form of a quadratic equation. You can find the vertex of a parabola very quickly if it's already in this form. The vertex is h comma k. So you can just turn a normal general form equation, ax squared plus bx plus c quadratic equation that we see all the time, to what is known as the vertex form, where is f of x equals x minus h squared plus k. So if you see it in this form and they ask you what the vertex of the parabola is, just negate, take the negative of the h there and take k. So if this was x minus 3 and this is x minus 3 squared plus 4, fine, then the vertex is going to be at 3, 4. If this is x plus 3, notice then this would have to be minus 3, and then it'd be minus 3, 4. If it's in general form, you can also just use negative b over 2a to find the x value of the vertex, which is also the axis of symmetry, and then you can just plug it into the formula to find the y value of the vertex. You can start at the end plugging in choice D. If you have a formula in a problem, you can just plug in choice D. The test maker knows most people will start with choice A, so starting from the end will save time. Some people also do back solving, and I've advised people to do back solving starting with choice B or C. That also works fine if the answers are in ascending or descending order, because if you know an answer is too big, when you plug it in, then you can pick a smaller one. If you know it's too small, you can pick a bigger one. But starting with choice D, it's kind of a clever method starting at the end. I've used it before just intuitively on tests where in the bigger picture, I went to the end of the section on a multiple choice test and found some really easy problems at the end. Although SAT math section problems are arranged from easiest to most difficult, not so much on the ACT, but definitely on the SAT, and it resets in the grid-in section. That is, once you get to the student-produced response, better known as the grid-in, the first grid-in should be easy. However, what is easy for most SAT takers, that is what they use to arrange the questions, and they got it from experimental testing, experimental sections that they made students like you take. Just remember, that's not necessarily what's easy or hard for you. You may be not the same as the average SAT test taker. And certainly with the ACT, the questions are not even in order of difficulty, so feel free to skip around. Feel free to start at the end to see if there's an easy question at the end that they just figure you won't get right because you'll run out of time. So definitely feel free to start at the end. Feel free to plug in choice D. Go in through the outdoors, so to speak. A little Led Zeppelin reference for you there. So now that we know that the side length is 2 of the square, then we can easily tell that the diagonal of the square is 2 root 2. How we do that is we know that whenever we split a square diagonally, we end up with a 45, because that's half a 90. This is 45, half a 90. 90, so it's 45, 45, 90, and you should know, and if you don't know, you can find it in the little box they give you on the SAT, that the side length ratio of a 45, 45, 90 triangle is 1, 1, root 2. Since we know that this is 2, because we set the radius equal to 1 and the diameter is equal to 2, so the side length is 2, then this is going to be 2, 2, and then this diagonal is 2 square root of 2. So once we know that, then we know that the ratio of the diameter, which we know is 2, to the diagonal is 2 divided by 2 square root of 2, as I've noted here, which then simplifies to 1 over square root of 2, but which we're going to multiply by radical 2. That is square root of 2 divided by square root of 2 to get square root of 2 over 2. If you don't know why we did that, that's called rationalizing the denominator, because a lot of math teachers don't like it if you have a radical, square root of some number in the denominator. And the SAT sometimes will have it, but usually doesn't. They also would like you to rationalize the denominator, especially because it makes the problem a little harder. So then we know it's answer choice C, which is radical 2 over 2, which we see here. So, all right. And more math tips. You want to know the vertex form of a quadratic equation. You can find the vertex of a parabola very quickly if it's already in this form. The vertex is h comma k. So you can just turn a normal general form equation, ax squared plus bx plus c quadratic equation that we see all the time, to what is known as the vertex form, where is f of x equals x minus h squared plus k. So if you see it in this form and they ask you what the vertex of the parabola is, just negate, take the negative of the h there and take k. So if this was x minus 3 and this is x minus 3 squared plus 4, fine, then the vertex is going to be at 3, 4. If this is x plus 3, notice then this would have to be minus 3, and then it'd be minus 3, 4. If it's in general form, you can also just use negative b over 2a to find the x value of the vertex, which is also the axis of symmetry, and then you can just plug it into the formula to find the y value of the vertex. You can start at the end, plugging in choice D. If you have a formula in a problem, you can just plug in choice D. The test maker knows most people will start with choice A, so starting from the end will save time. Some people also do back solving, and I've advised people to do back solving starting with choice B or C. That also works fine if the answers are in ascending or descending order, because if you know an answer is too big, when you plug it in, then you can pick a smaller one. If you know it's too small, you can pick a bigger one. But starting with choice D, it's kind of a clever method starting at the end. I've used it before just intuitively on tests where in the bigger picture, I went to the end of the section on the multiple choice test and found some really easy problems at the end. Although SAT math section problems are arranged from easiest to most difficult, not so much on the ACT, but definitely on the SAT, and it resets in the grid-in section. That is, once you get to the student-produced response, better known as the grid-in, the first grid-in should be easy. However, what is easy for most SAT takers, that is what they use to arrange the questions, and they got it from experimental testing, experimental sections that they made students like you take. Just remember, that's not necessarily what's easy or hard for you. You may be not the same as the average SAT test taker. And certainly with the ACT, the questions are not even in order of difficulty, so feel free to skip around. Feel free to start at the end to see if there's an easy question at the end that they just figure you won't get right because you'll run out of time. So definitely feel free to start at the end. Feel free to plug in choice D. Go in through the outdoors, so to speak. A little Led Zeppelin reference for you there. So another thing you should do is add, subtract, multiply, divide, or factor problems. If a problem looks like you have to do tons of calculations, there's probably an easier way, especially if it's on the non-calculator section. They're not going to give you something that just measures how fast you can do long division or something like that. So, for example, if x minus y equals 3 and x squared minus y squared equals 15, what is x plus y? Well, the easiest way to do this is to know the difference of squares. Since x plus y times x minus y is equal to x squared minus y squared, 3 times x plus y is equal to 15, so x plus y is equal to 5. If you don't use that, you have to substitute in x minus 3 for y in x squared minus y squared, or some other really ugly, involved method with lots of steps where you can make a mistake. It's kind of like any engineer will tell you if something has moving parts, it's going to break, and anyone who does anything that involves steps, including engineers, computer programmers, etc., the more steps you put into a process, the more likely something's going to go wrong. So keeping it simple is the best method. Easy tricks with the distributive property. What's 3 times 97? That's not that easy to do off the top of your head, but the easy way to do it is realize that 97 is 100 minus 3, so 3 times 97 is equal to 3 times 100 minus 3, which is 300 minus 9, which is 291. You want to know these polynomial expansions, know the difference of squares. X plus y times x minus y equals x squared minus y squared, as we already discussed. This is always, 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 always on the SAT. Did I get my point across? It's always on the SAT. Oh, by the way, it's always on the SAT. And it's likely to be on the ACT. So notice that x plus y I, where I is the imaginary unit, the square root of -1, times x minus yi is equal to x squared plus y squared. The difference of squares changes signs in the middle when you are using complex numbers. That is x plus yi. X plus y times x plus y, that is x plus y squared, is equal to x squared plus 2xy plus y squared, and x minus y times x minus y is x squared minus 2xy plus y squared. So definitely you should know that. Here they are written out for you. Please, please, please know that for the test. Important algebraic expressions. X plus y divided by xy is the same as 1 over x plus 1 over y. So that's really important for solving rate problems where machine A can do a job in 3 hours, machine B can do a job in 5 hours. How many hours will it take machines A and B working at their respective rates to do the same job, working together? You will need this formula. X minus y divided by xy is 1 minus x over 1 minus y, where x and y are non-zero. So for both of those, x and y have to be non-zero because otherwise you have 1 over 0, which is undefined. So the idea is finding a common denominator. Think about 1/2 plus 1/3. You multiply 1/2 times 3 over 3, and then you multiply 1/3 by 2 over 2, so you get 3/6 plus 2/6. That's equal to 3 plus 2 over 2 times 3. You should also know the distributive property that we've already discussed. A times B plus C is equal to AB plus AC, and A times B minus C is AB minus AC. More math tips if you're doing coordinate geometry, Cartesian coordinates. Know that the coordinate distance formula, which is based on the Pythagorean theorem, please know that as well. It's in the SAT formula box, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, the distance between the 2 points, D is going to be C. It's the hypotenuse of this right triangle. X2 minus X1, that's going to be one side. That's going to be the difference in the X values. And the difference in the Y values or Y coordinates is Y2 minus Y1. So you can easily see that D squared is equal to Y2 minus Y1 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared, so you get the distance formula. D is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. That's really easy to remember. Just know it for the test. Circle coordinate formula. What if you have a graph of a circle on Cartesian coordinates? Well, the generic coordinate formula for that is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared, where the center is at hk and r is the radius. So when you see that, automatically know that this has to be minus, this has to be minus. If this is a plus, that means h is going to be minus. So it's x minus 3 squared. The x-coordinate of the circle center is 3. If it's x plus 3 squared, then you have to go, oh, wait a minute, x plus 3 is x minus minus 3. So then you end up with the x-coordinate of the center being minus 3, not plus 3. And minus k, same thing, is if it's minus k, then the y-coordinate is k. If it's plus k, then the y-coordinate is minus k. And remember, it's the radius squared. So if they ask you something like where they said, r squared is 25, you need to know that the radius, they could ask you the radius, is going to be 5. This formula will not be given to you. It's also going to help if you know how to complete the square, to solve a quadratic equation, to solve many circle problems involving this formula. You can Google completing the square or look in your math or SAT review book for information on how to do that. I'll do a video on completing the square at some point, but I haven't done one yet. Anyway, for the sake of all that is good and holy, know this for the SAT, and it will also help for the ACT. Know this formula, you will need it, and it will not be given to you on either test. Statistics, you want to know the mean, the median, and the mode. The arithmetic mean, that's just the average. So if you see that listed, the average, and then they put in parentheses, arithmetic mean, blah, 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 they're just giving that to you because somebody might have just been taught arithmetic mean instead of average. They don't want anyone being able to complain that the question was unclear. There is no other kind of average than the arithmetic mean. That's just the average. The median is the middle number when you list all the values. Notice that if you list more than one value, or you have more than one value that's the same, you have to list the same value all the times it appears. So the median of 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is 2, because 2 is the fourth of the 7 values, even though you'd think, well, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 should be the middle value. No, because they listed it they listed 2 more than once. If the number of values is even, then you have to take the average of the middle 2 to find the mean. You might as well know that they're going to have an even number of values, almost certainly because they want to know that you know how to do that. So it's just like the bar exam to be an attorney. They're going to test on the exception to a rule to make sure that you know the rule and the exception. Any kind of test like that where they're testing on a rule that has an exception, they're going to test on the exception or the gap area to make sure you know that. The mode is the most common value, so in this data set it would be 2 because 2 is listed 3 times. Mode also means style, so you can think of the mode as the most popular style of value if that helps you at all. Consider watching my math videos. I mean, it's a little late to do much math review the day before the test, but you have about a week, at least at the time that I'm recording this, more like 6 days, but anyway. That should be enough time for you to brush up on things you've forgotten before the test. Things you did learn, but you just need a little refresher on. You can do that. So here's a playlist of my math videos. I'll have the link up for you by the time you see this. So enjoy. Click on that. What should I know for the SAT English section? Well, the general strategies are pretty easy. Just as in the math section, don't pick A quickly if the answer seems too easy if you didn't have to think about it, is what I mean. The sucker punch, easy, wrong answers exist in the reading section just as they do in the math section. If they give you a word that sticks out, like motorboat, and they could easily make it so the question is wrong. Neil hated motorboats. He thought that people who use watercraft for pleasure should use sailboats. If one of the answer choices is Neil especially liked, and one of the answers is motorboats, you can get suckered by that by saying, oh, it said motorboat, so that must be the right answer. Please make sure you check that. Don't answer vocabulary and context questions without going to the lines referenced and reading the sentences surrounding it. You might need to read up and down a paragraph. It's worth the time. It's easy if you actually read the answers. It's just go look at it. I guarantee you if you don't read, those few lines around it, you'll never get it right because it'll be a secondary meaning or it'll be an archaic meaning or it just won't be the meaning that you picked. So just go look, and they're easy points. Remember, all of these questions are all worth 1 point each, so you might as well get the easy ones like the vocabulary right. Don't pick the smart kid answer. The word you don't know is often not the right answer. So if you have a question where the answer choices are chicken, rock, chair, or Opopanax, I think it's Opopanax. Anyway, see, I didn't even spell it right. Don't assume that the answer is Opopanax or Opopanax. The SAT knows that a dumb kid will figure the word, that's the right answer is the word he doesn't know because since, the smart kids know it. So when I was in school, people would have said, that sounds like a word John Linebaugh would use. So I'll pick that and then I'll get the right answer just like he does. If somebody came up to me, I'd probably have to say, no, the answer was actually rock, but good try. In case you're wondering what an Opopanax is, or it's actually an Opopanax with an A, anyway, shows you how often I use that word. I just got the word from a Stephen King novel that I read, where they kept using that word, not in the way that it was meant to, but that's the idea, is you have to look it up and say, oh, okay, that's funny. So Opopanax is a kind of gum resin obtained from a plant. It's traditionally considered to have medicinal properties. So it's a gum resin. Kind of like myrrh. Myrrh is something that's mentioned, frankincense, myrrh, and gold, the gifts of the Magi to baby Jesus. George Carlin, the late great comedian, did a little parody of that where he played Jesus and he's saying, well, what's myrrh? Well, I believe it's a gum resin. Oh, that's great. Just what a newborn baby needs, a gum resin, Anyway, so don't pick an answer just because it's a word you don't know. There's a really good chance that you're just going to be picking a sucker punch answer. And yes, if you know the other three words are definitely wrong, then yes, do pick the word you don't know. But more likely than not, it's going to be a word that you already know is the right word. Review grammar basics. So know what makes a sentence a subject and a predicate, also known as a noun and a verb. Know what a dependent clause is and that it's not a sentence. So a dependent clause is something that could lean into, but leads into something. So leaning over on one side of his foot, he appeared to be injured. So leaning over on one side of his foot, that's not a sentence by itself. You can easily see if I say, leaning over on one side of his foot, you'd say, what? Well, what about it? So no, that's a dependent clause, that's not a sentence. Also, you should know that the command form of a sentence doesn't have to have the subject explicitly stated. So if I said, clean up the kitchen, that is a complete sentence. The subject is you implied. If you don't know that, you know it now. My 10th grade biology lab instructor didn't know that. And both me and the kid who ended up being salutatorian of the class, I was valedictorian, both ended up in the same argument on the same day, which was the first lab of biology class in 10th grade. So take that, Mr. Miller, you're wrong. Anyway, know how to use periods, commas, semicolons, and dashes correctly. Know the fanboys conjunctions, for and, nor, but, or, yet, so, or since. Know the logical comparison errors and how to fix them. For example, if I say, I'm better than everyone at basketball. Well, besides being not even remotely true, even if it were true that I was the best basketball player in the world, or that if I were the best basketball player in the world, then you'd say, wow, John, you're so good at basketball, you're even better than yourself? How does that work? So you want to know that. You want to know how to fix misplaced modifiers. You want to know that they, them, and their cannot be used as gender-neutral singular pronouns. And if all three answers, other than one odd duck answer, seem the same, except some minor issue in phrasing, that is, different from versus different than, or are different, like chickens are different from ducks, or chickens are different than ducks. Chickens and ducks are different. Look for the fourth answer to be correct. There's probably some grammatical or punctuation error that you are overlooking because you're looking at these three different things that, so pick the fourth answer if you see something like that. More English section tips. So know when to use who and whom. Hint, if he would work in the sentence, use who. So who is at the door? Is he at the door? If him would work, use whom. Are you talking to him? To whom are you talking? Whom is an object, who is a subject. Lie is what you do when you recline to sleep. Lay is what you do when you place something somewhere. Make sure you read the editing questions that are something like, suppose the writer wanted to emphasize that, and then whatever point they're trying to make in brackets there. So make sure that you read that carefully so you pick the right answer. The choices will all be grammatically correct. They'll all sound reasonably fresh and won't have anything wrong with them, but only one of them will actually do what they asked about in the question. Make sure your answer choices to the questions referring to graphs make sense in the light of the information in the graphs. And again, if it talks about information that's not in the graph, it can't be right even if it's true. And again, see the playlist that I reference here. Even more English section tips. Parenthetical phrases, those set off with commas, dashes, or parentheses, have to begin and end with the same punctuation mark, dash, comma, or parenthesis. You want to watch out for parenthetical phrases, that's parenthetical phrases, that is, that hide the relationship between the subject and the verb. For example, the burglar who has broken into many houses are on trial today. So a lot of people just say houses are, yeah, plural, plural noun, plural verb, what's the problem? Trouble is houses is not the subject here. That's not the noun that counts. It's the burglar. Take out this whole thing that's in between. They call that the trash. Take out the trash. The burglar are on trial today? No, the burglar is on trial today. So if you take that out, who has broken into many houses, then you're left with the burglar are on trial today. You immediately see the burglar is on trial today. Something of which you should be aware. A collective noun followed by the word of and another noun is singular. A flock of seagulls is one flock, so you'd say a flock of seagulls is a lovely sight at the beach, not a flock of seagulls are a lovely sight at the beach. At least not in U.S. English. It might be different in British English. So you could say, your favorite band sucks in U.S. English, but you would probably say, your favorite band suck in British English. So A Flock of Seagulls was a new wave band from the early 1980s. So if you wanted to say in U.S. English that you don't care for them, you might say, A Flock of Seagulls sucks. But in British, they'd say, A Flock of Seagulls suck. Anyway, the SAT does not test British English, so just know that a something of something is just a singular something. So a keg of nails is one keg, even if it's got thousands of nails in it. A union of plumbers is going to just be one union, even if it's got 10,000 plumbers as members. All right. That versus which and who, that identifies something definitely, essential information. So whoever owns the car that is parked in front of the driveway must move it now or we will have it towed. So is parked in front of the driveway identifies the car in an essential way. Which car do you mean? Well, the one that's parked in front of the driveway. What car did you think I was going to move? It's not the car parked across the street that I care about. So, which is a non-essential information? The car, which is a Mustang GT, is parked on someone's lawn. It's not that important that the car is a Mustang GT, since probably you can just identify it by whatever car is parked on someone's lawn. Most neighborhoods, people don't do that. Certainly, if it's not your car and your lawn, you shouldn't be parking on someone else's lawn with your car. So, which is often used in parenthetical phrases as above, since parenthetical phrases can be taken out without making the sentence unintelligible. So if we said, the car is parked on someone's lawn, that's still perfectly intelligible. It makes sense, even though we don't have the extra information that it's a Mustang GT. Less versus fewer. If you can count the items individually, use fewer. Supermarket express lanes used to say 10 items or less, but now many say 10 items or fewer. If you can't count the item without referring to a measuring unit, such as gallons, pounds, etc., use less. For example, it should take you less than a minute to do this SAT problem. So if you can count the thing individually without resorting to units, use fewer. If you can't, use less. All right. So moving on to the next thing here, the reading section. Flip through the section to see what passages interest, bore, or scare you. Save the scary and or boring for last. So if it's a question about physics or astronomy and you know you hated those in school, then just skip it and save it for the last. If it's something that's boring to you, oh my God, this is a Jane Austen novel. Oh, no, I don't want to read this. Nobody actually liked this even when it was new. They just had nothing better to do but read these stupid things. Fine, save that for the last passage you do, because that way if you're running out of time, it's less likely that you're missing something you otherwise would have gotten right, because either you don't understand it, or it scares you, or it bores you. Use the line references, for example, at line 3, or line paragraph references in questions such as in the third paragraph to make sure you get it right. because some distractor answers could be where they talk about something that's in the second paragraph, but the question's about the third paragraph. They might be defining one word one way at line 3, but they use a different meaning of the word at line 6. One of the distractor answers will be the way it's used in line 6. Make sure that you can tell if the question's a main idea, detail, vocabulary and context, inference, command of evidence, or tone/mood question. And do the vocabulary and context. So the word cheesy at line 5 most nearly means, well, are they saying that the macaroni was very cheesy? Or are they saying the car was very cheesy? Well, okay, if it's macaroni and cheese, then cheesy defined as covered in cheese would make sense. If a car is cheesy, you probably mean it's cheap, it's of inferior quality, it's very something that was meant to be stylish but really fails miserably, so it just looks stupid, so it's cheesy in that way. The meaning will be easy to figure out if you read a few lines up or down from that line, but it almost certainly won't be the most common meaning of the word. So, they probably do mean cheesy, meaning that it's inferior quality, not literally that it's covered with cheese. Anyway, remember, the smart kid word you don't know is probably wrong, so if they define cheesy as rheombulous, I'm just making up a word, okay, it's probably not rheombulous. All right, reading section. Go straight to the questions and find the command of evidence which provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question. Questions, those are called command of evidence questions. Then go and mark the question right before or the previous question to which the question refers, and mark it with a smiley face, a star, some sort of mark, so that way when you get to the, in quotes, previous question, you'll know, oh, I should mark where I find the information that gives me the answer to that question, which will make it easy to answer the command of evidence question since I'll have the line numbers marked off. I'll just be able to match them with the line numbers in the correct answer and be done. That won't always work that way because there could be more than one section of the passage that has information that leads you to the right answer. So if you don't find it there, well, then unfortunately you're stuck searching to see if the other command of evidence question answers contain information that would lead you to the answer that you've already picked. But this is better than not doing it because otherwise you may just end up answering the question to which the command of evidence question refers, realize, oh my God, I can't find where I got the information for the previous question, even though it was right here and obviously is still right here, but for some reason I'm having trouble finding it. You can save yourself a lot of stress just by doing this little trick here and marking off the command of evidence questions and then making sure that you mark the information as you answer the previous question to which the command of evidence question refers. Remember, the main idea, primary purpose, chief theme is the answer to why did this person write this in the first place? What's the point? That means narrow details, even if correct, aren't going to be the right answer. So if it's a question about militarism, or if the passage is about militarism, I should say, then a narrow detail about the kind of cannons that were used in the Crimean War probably is not going to be the right answer, even if it is a correct detail. Tone questions use adjectives, adverbs, and even ironic quotation marks. For example, actions can be heroic or reckless, which would be adjectives, depending on how you look at them. For example, a high-speed chase by a police officer could be heroic if the police officer manages to stop somebody who's speeding like crazy through traffic, maybe even firing a gun at people out the window or something like that. At great risk to his own personal safety, but in order to save the public from greater harm than what was already inflicted by this crazy person in traffic. It might also be seen as reckless if the police officer could have radioed ahead to other police officers to block off the intersection, etc., thus risking much less collateral damage to property and other people by not chasing this person through traffic at high speed. So Depends on how you look at it, depends on the facts. Two people could look at exactly the same factual scenario with different assumptions and different ideas, and thus use different adjectives to define things, or to describe things, I should say. Adverbs, same thing. I can say he drove recklessly. No, he drove heroically to stop this awful speeding shooter. Anyway, quotation marks can make something ironic. That is, putting quotation marks around something tends to delegitimize it because the author is distancing himself or herself from it. So the security guards, in quotes, heroic actions in shooting an unarmed homeless person who had already stopped and raised his hands. Okay, obviously the writer here is saying someone else described this as heroic, even though at the same time the writer is saying, that's not heroic at all. It was a homeless person who wasn't armed, who was already surrendering. There was no need for the security guard to shoot this person. So that can be the ironic use of quotation marks. Might also say, the, in quotes, delicious food at the buffet was obvious leftovers from their earlier meals that they would have had to throw out otherwise. Again, it's not particularly delicious. Reading section. Be sure that you go to the correct lines. A word you're asked to define may be used differently at different places, and the way it's used in a different place from the line mentioned is a great distractor. Wrong answer. So you want to make sure that you find each choice listed in a detail question. Don't be distracted by eye-catching words. That is, Jack worked for an organized crime family would not support an answer such as, Jack worked hard to support his wife and children. So the fact that you just saw something like Jack worked hard or Jack worked hard for a family. Well, Jack worked for an organized crime family. That doesn't mean that he worked for a family that was very organized, that was his own family. That's a different kind of family. For the paired passages, answer the questions pertaining to the first passage first, then the second passage next. Don't worry, the first passage's questions will come first, so distractor answers from the second section won't work. The idea, if you haven't seen the second section yet, then you can't be distracted by answers that came from the second section. Hints for the optional SAT essay. You don't have to do the way I did it in my videos. I use the get going method where I write on the fly, leaving space for the introductory paragraph to be written. If you want to do an outline or make some notes before you start writing, that's fine. Just use a method that works. Also note that any notes or outline you write on the planning page they give you will not count towards the essay. It's not going to be graded, so make sure that anything you want the graders to see is actually on the lined paper that they give you. In the first paragraph, you're always going to want to name the title, author, and genre of the passage. It's usually going to be something like a newspaper article, an editorial, something like that. It's going to be some sort of persuasive essay. And give examples of ethos, pathos, and logos. That is, ethos is information, authoritative opinion. Pathos is emotion, rhetoric, things that are supposed to make you feel a certain way. And logos, which is the underlying logic of the passage. So you want to describe how all of those are used and how they're used to make the point. One nice thing is at the end of the essay, or the end of the essay that you have to read and describe in your essay, they tell you exactly what the point of the essay is in the box at the end. And also it's usually going to be very easy to tell what the point of the passage is, but in case you're missing something or you're afraid you're missing something, you can just look at the box at the end and it will say, describe how the author uses such things as powerful word choice, to create a case for being a blood donor, picking up trash outside even if it's not yours, etc., something like that. So you'll know what the theme is. More hints for the optional SAT essay. Always mention ethos, pathos, and logos, even if you don't use those names. You could say facts, emotional language and rhetoric, powerful word choice, logic, things like that. You can mention other devices, humor, metaphor, etc. as appropriate, personal anecdotes, attacks. Don't overreach. If you're trying to say something, if you're trying to describe literary devices, etc., make sure that you actually know what those words mean. Make sure you actually understand how they work, etc. You're going to look a lot worse if you describe something using a 5-syllable word that doesn't really describe what you think it does than if you just use simple language. So if you forget what ethos, pathos, and logos mean, and you just say, uses certain facts and authoritative opinion, appeals to emotion and logic, that's fine. You'll still get full credit for it. That's why they don't list ethos, pathos, and logos in the SAT essay instructions. Do not mention your opinion on the topic discussed in the essay. You are simply to analyze the methods used by the author. This is specifically mentioned in the essay instructions. Yes, it goes against my nature as well. I like to express my opinion. One thing you can possibly do is use your opinion on the subject to point out a way the essay could have been stronger. You could say, the author presents a very compelling case, but seems to ignore an argument that would contradict his or her point. Seems to completely ignore an obvious counter-argument. Or maybe the author even ignores an argument that would support his or her point. You could mention that. But really only do that after you have already analyzed what the author actually did right. Also, please consider watching my essay done in real-time videos, which I've linked here. Did you find this video useful? Please like it and subscribe to this channel. Neither action costs you anything, and you'll always be alerted about my new and always free videos. Why do I care? Well, it's simple. YouTube doesn't give me any ad revenue unless I have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours. That's 240,000 minutes of view time in a year. So if you saw an ad on my channel, please know that I got nothing from that. I have not received any of that ad revenue. And that will not change until I've reached the 1,000 subscriber and 4,000 hour mark and actually am approved by Google /YouTube/Alphabet for monetization. So while many people are watching these at the time that I'm recording this, I don't have 4,000 hours of watch time. I also don't have anywhere near 1,000 subscribers, although I keep getting closer every day. So, for the same reasons, you're not only welcome but encouraged to share links to this video, put it in playlists, etc. I'm always happy to read and respond to constructive criticism or suggestions for new videos.
I'd appreciate your input.
I reserve the right to delete comments from and block those who specialize in destructive criticism, people we often call trolls, or things that are off topics, spammers, disturbed people who are just looking for some forum to vent on, whatever. No. Please don't do that in my comment section. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.